Hey guys, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. So, in the last episode, we did a tour of the spawn, and now we're back here, kind of in, I want to say one of the southernmost parts of um, the explored region, or at least the established road system. um, yeah, I think I finished this road last night off stream. We also had somebody drop by who they ended up showing me their realm, but it come to find out I do a deep dive, and I don't think I don't know, is this person named Wimbu? But when I looked up on YouTube, they have like 6 million viewers or subscribers, and it's a pretty big SMP channel, and they actually have like several other channels with the different members. But anyway, so this other guy from Twitch, who's named Wimbu, he showed me the realm, and it was it was uh, it was like the realm from from like the YouTube videos and all that. But then I go back and I look at his like name tag, and I don't think it's the original Wimbu, because this Wimbu had some numbers after it, and so I think basically what happened is he probably copied the it's called unstable SMP. Um, I think he copied that world and then somehow is hosting it on a realm. So it is the world that you see in the YouTube videos. And so he gave me a tour of, it's called the Northern Council. I'm not sure if you guys follow that world on YouTube, but it's really cool. Really cool world, and um, yeah, what they built in there is just incredible. Just the scale of it and everything. So I was kind of watching some of those videos um, from, I guess I want to say the real Wimbu, and but yeah. Anyway, I recorded that as an episode, so it was cool that he gave me a tour, even though I don't think he's the real Wimbu. He's some kind of imposter, because his name had a string of numbers after it. So that pretty much cracked the case there. Either way, I think I'm gonna upload it to the YouTube channel. And just be like, "Oh, I toured the unstable SMP server." Call it something like that. All right, now the question is, where did my stonecutter go? For once, I haven't lost the horse. The horse is right there. The stonecutter could be anywhere. Anyway, the road is going to go through here, through this nice patch or field of flowers, which I guess wherever, like the way the game's coded, it like you can't just put bone meal anywhere and expect a bunch of flowers to grow, except for I think in areas like this where if I were to place bone meal down, I think it would give me a lot of flowers. So this is a good spot to collect some dye. Okay, found the stonecutter. Can't build a bed. But yeah, either way, just the tour of the unstable realm, it was cool. I hadn't ever flown in a light like with an elytra before, so I did that and checked out some of the builds, mainly the Northern Council, which is just this giant castle. In like a snowy biome, and there were a bunch of polar bears at the entrance to it. It's kind of funny. Alright, I know I have a bed way over here. Yeah, I guess I don't follow that many Minecraft YouTube channels, but I feel like I maybe have heard of the unstable SMP before. I just didn't connect the dots when he dropped by my chat last night. So I'm like, I wonder if you're able to like make a copy of that realm, like if anybody's able to make a copy of it, or if you have to like buy it. I'm not really sure. They make a bunch of episodes, like kind of like storyline. Like the episodes have a storyline to them, and they put like kind of, I want to say, just dramatic music behind the different scenes. But it's cool, just like looking. Oh shoot, looking at the builds that they do. It's really cool. Because I kind of got into like Hermitcraft. They have a bunch of videos and a bunch of players. And I think they do like seasons. So they'll do a lot of work on a world, and then I think they just start a new world. So yeah, they're really cool to check out. And then another one, the It's Marlowe. I think he does like single player, but he's built a lot of stuff in his world. So really those are kind of the main two that I follow. Oh, and I guess there's like there's some that are, no offense, a little bit annoying. Um and one of them actually is like really informative whenever there's like a new update. So I do watch those, and his name is Waddles. He's really good at doing like overview kind of updates whenever there's a new update that comes out. And yeah, I haven't been paying too close attention. I know that there was the sulphur update, and obviously like the miniature animals. I've definitely noticed that, but I haven't seen any sulphur yet. But I think that update is out. And how many mobs are there? At least I'll get my levels up. Oh, the rain actually stopped for once. Never does that. Until you sleep through the night, then it usually does. I was like, I hope that's not the last. thing this sword can handle because it is down to like no bars. Oh shoot. Oh, this would be a bad time for my sword to break. I mean, this is like an insane amount of mobs. Can't escape them. So yeah, let me know, guys, if y'all follow the unstable SMP channels. At least now I know about it. It's kind of interesting. I don't think it's something I would really get into personally, but they do make like well-produced videos. Alrighty. Yeah, I should like make some more buildings. It kind of inspired me to do that. Just been so focused on expanding our road network. This really is like a good spot. I should have built the city right here, honestly. But I kind of like the terrain, like it's kind of more interesting over there where the city actually is. Okay. But I was like, oh, maybe I'll put a port, like a major port right here. And then it can kind of be the port for the main city that's like just over in the distance there. All right, the road will need to go right through here. So I kind of overextended. A bit overextended myself on this road. Or this. I need to tear that down. Oh well. Hopefully the video is not as laggy today. I kind of made some adjustments in OBS, and I'm hoping that will make things a bit smoother. Funny thing is, didn't mean to do that. Funny thing is, that is the elevation I want this road to be at. It's a bit high right here, but eventually. Oh, that's a bummer. Not too far away. All right. And what else? Yeah, we were gonna watch a YouTube video in the last episode, but then I got distracted by Wimbu, aka, well, air quotes Wimbu. And getting a tour of that realm, so we stopped the video, the other YouTube video we were gonna watch. It's a nice sunny day out here in Minecraft. Good day to build a road, if you ask me. Yeah, see, this is the elevation I want it to be at, so it kind of works out. Just I gotta love it. You got to love it. All right. Should probably kill one more sheep too. Get one more thing of wool so I can make a bed. Yeah, this is just a really nice field. Gotta go all the way over here to get a sheep. And yeah, I want to put some more, like put some bone meal down. Let's see, I guess I didn't get any. Um, and like grow even more, some more flowers around here. Wow, these trees are just barely in the way. All right. Getting distracted very easily today. Right. Shovel, 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 shovel. Need a shovel. I've gone through a lot of shovels. Unenchanted copper shovels. They don't last too long. But gotta build these roads. Just chilling with the cow. Chilling with the cows. All right. Yeah, okay. So, yeah. Really, this will need to be here. Just gonna check one thing. Make sure I'm nice and in focus. Yep. Pretty well in focus, I'd say. Whoa, whoa. All right. Moving right along. Moving right along, yep. It's a wild land. Got a lot of animals roaming about. I'm not gonna deal with any monsters right now. We don't have time for that. Come on. And luckily I have a ton of cobblestone from digging out the metro. Um, so maybe that's partially why I was so inspired to build roads, because I have the cobblestone for it. All right. All right, I think we will probably watch a YouTube video. So, and I'm thinking it's going to be another Sleslor video. He is really one of my, I've really gotten into his videos lately, and he puts out videos pretty much every day now. They're kind of like mystery, suspense type stories that people, I guess, since he's built up um, like such a big following, that people like call in, like they'll like call him and tell him all of these um, stories about kind of the strange or like yeah, really just strange stories and experiences. All right, yeah, so I'll just keep the elevation the same here. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We will queue up a YouTube. Queuing up the YouTube. This one is called Guard for Guard for Gold Mines in Canada. We have 5 strict rules that keep us alive. All right.
Go through a lot of details And it's because most typical people who think of trying to steal from gold mines or diamond mines
I think the audio is
aren't
probably
just going to
good.
turn up and try and raid the place anymore. Now that does still happen, and that's actually one of the rules in
Just gonna turn
today's
it up
video, but
here.
it's extremely rare because the entire place is like a fortress. It's surrounded by trenches, massive steel gates with barbed wire and spiky bits everywhere, cameras, patrol drones, officers, you name it.
Patrol
Raiding the place
drones.
is just a bit hopeless, really. But the most important thing that he had to learn the very first day on the job was the two-man integrity rule. When he turned up to do this, he already had a huge background in working security. He had
Really don't
been
want to
a
tear these trees
security for
down.
nightclubs. He'd been a security for events like different marathons, running competitions in Chicago, California, and he had been specifically trained for this job. He had worked his way up, he had gained experience, and when he went
To
on
be a
that first
security
day, he
guard
turned
in
up, there was a
Goldmine?
group of around about 8 guys, and they were changing over the security teams as for some reason the contract had changed and they were
Alright, I
basically
don't think
changing
it's
to a new
choppy.
company. The people that ran this gold mine were changing out the old security contract. So when the guys finally get there, Danny introduces himself. He starts talking to the other guys. He doesn't know any of them, but they start to make friends and talk about what they used to do as their previous job. Nearly all of them were security guards, bodyguards, some kind of clothes protection officers, and these guys were very well trained. When they first turned up, though, there was a guy that came out, and he was, the guy who gave them an introduction. He gave them a tour around the gold mine. He showed them their positions and their posts where they would be staying. He went through a lot of stuff, and he explained, look, guys, this is going to take way, way longer than just one day. You are going to be training on the job for probably the first 2 years. That's how complex it
Wow,
is. So
it's a
we'll
long
start with the
time.
most important, he said to Danny. So Danny starts listening and he goes over the two-man integrity rule. And it's simple, really. If somebody tries to open a vault, a seal, an important door to an important room, enter into a, highly sensitive area, like an area in the gold mine, there must be more than one man. There can never be one person doing this. There must always be a minimum of 2, but ideally 3 different officers doing that very important and sensitive procedure. And this is to stop people from being coerced. That is why they asked him who he lives with, where he lives, where he goes, what does he do at the weekends, does he have any hobbies. They were so strict on this. And as he was going through this training, he got talking to a lot of the guys, and one of the guys who had worked on a gold mine somewhere else in Canada, right out in bear country in the middle of the forest, they had actually spoken about an experience that happened. One of the guys started noticing that he was being followed back to go and see his girlfriend. And the reason he noticed is because a lot of security guards are not just trained to be socially aware and situationally aware, but they actually have almost like a natural talent. A lot of them are, guys who do martial arts. They're very aware of their surroundings. They're always looking around, they're
Kind of
kind
makes
of dancing
sense. Kind
around.
of gotta be
And
aware.
it's like, I don't know if you've seen those kind of hawks
Almost
or the birds of
paranoid.
prey. When they look around, it's very like, it's so fast. And he noticed it. He could tell. And what it was is there was a specific truck. He came out, he'd leave the area where he was posted, he'd go out the gate and he'd go to his vehicle. And it wouldn't be just, sat there waiting in the parking lot. It would be joining him around 10 minutes into his journey. And this truck would always be parked up by houses that he'd drive by because the gold mines are always kind of in the middle of nowhere for security reasons to make it hard to get in them. So he would have to drive for a long time. And there was a neighborhood that was quite a remote neighborhood where he was driving back from. And there was always a bunch of cars parked up outside the homes because these were small homes, very cheap, and they didn't really have driveways. So everyone had to park out on the street or on the verge of the grass. And there was one particular truck. It was a grey truck, some Suzuki truck or something, or Isuzu, I think the brand was. And he would pull up, wait for him to drive by, and go straight behind him.
Oh,
And this guy was
it's
very
highly
bitter because
sus.
he would go all the way to a certain point and he would make wrong turns and he would not go back to his girlfriend because he didn't, he's not silly. He knew that if he went back to his girlfriend, that would be a big mistake. He instantly had to give this information in to his boss, to the other security officers, and make them aware of what was
You
happening.
don't want to be crossing the gold mine.
And eventually
Get you
this
in
truck
trouble real
was
quick.
disappearing. It was nowhere to be found. They left the area. So how is the two-man integrity rule important here? Well, if they had been successful with following him back to where he lived, they could have got to his girlfriend, they could have got to him, they could have done a lot of things to scare him, bribe him, and in these types of situations, they use the officers, the security guards who work in the gold mines to do things for them out of fear they'll lose someone, out of coercion, or because someone's been taken in their family. Like there's a word for it, they say. And
Ransom?
they've been taken and they have to do that thing to get them back, and they can't let law enforcement know. It is a living nightmare. So when Danny turned up to this training and this introduction, the first thing the guy was adamant about is the two-man integrity rule. On top of the fact he was asking, do you live alone? Check your routes driving back. If anything's following you, just double check, test, take dummy turns. But if you open any seals, any vaults, because they have huge
the keys.
responsibility, these guards. If something goes wrong on the site, they have access to the keys. They have the codes. Not all of them. There are some that only certain teams have, or the owners or managers of the gold mines have. But the security, those guys are there 24/7. There's teams of them that do shifts. They have access to this place, and it's, the amount of gold there. So they have to have one other guy there in case one is being bribed or coerced. So then the other one can analyze the situation and think, hang on, why are we opening this vault? Why are we opening this area with so much gold in it when there's no reason to be here? That is the two-man integrity rule explained. And if that guy had been got to...
Hey, why are we loading all the
they
gold
probably
onto
tried
a
to
truck
his
right
girlfriend,
now?
and use that against him, or they would have tried to scare him into getting something from the gold mine. And it's happened many times in the past. It's actually more common the further back you go in history. Nowadays, with the security, the two-man integrity rule, all the technology, you've got the passcodes, the fingerprint scanners, all the high technology makes it very difficult even for these criminals to try
Almost
and
done with this road.
bribe or coerce the gold mine security officers. The next rule that Danny told me is the no lunchbox.
This used to be a pillager
This was something that
outpost.
seemed pretty obvious because when he turned up to this gold mine,
I did
as
everything I
like
could
most
to
gold
destroy
mines
it.
in Canada, it was right in the heart of grizzly bear.
And hopefully there
The places
won't be any
are
more
usually
pillagers spawning
really
here.
hard to get to remote areas for obvious reasons, and that brings a lot of unusual activity from the wildlife, who are probably wondering, what on earth's this massive site in the middle of the forest doing here? Some of the bears obviously don't really seem to care, and most of the time they only care if they can smell food or something they want. There's no other reason they'd go up to these huge, great big 10 feet tall metal gates, because they have no reason to, and they get kind of intimidated and scared by it. So one day, Danny's just randomly going about his patrol, and he notices that there's some really weird sounds coming from around the area. He can't tell, but it sounds like some kind of grumbling. It's the noise that bears make when they're interested or kind of angry with somebody. And this particular gold mine is very,
the bears
very
are after the gold.
It has at one time sometimes up to 40 security officers working on site. So that team of 8 guys, which I explained, was just Danny's unit. They have particular units that specifically focus on areas of the gold mine, because you couldn't have 8 guys for one gold mine that spans, tons and tons of square feet it would take too long for them to get to one side or the other if there's something going on.
I have more
So
cobblestone.
he was walking around. And one of the things they do lots of different patrols. They do drone patrols and foot patrols. Foot patrols are more kind of old-fashioned, but they're still something that do need doing, and the officers like it because it gets them out from being sat down or just, doing nothing. They like to get the exercise. He was on this foot patrol. It's a rather cold day. It was starting to become winter when all of a sudden he starts to hear sounds off in the distance. Now, the fall had been particularly slow in coming on, so we hadn't had any, snow or anything.
My upstairs neighbor is so loud.
He was just wondering what this noise was. Some of the wildlife were acting a bit strange around the area, because a lot of them couldn't tell whether winter was actually on the way.
It's like, can you please be
looking around, he's trying to figure out where
a little more considerate.
It sounds like grumbling sounds, and he does think in his mind,
so annoying.
A bear or something. And he's going all the way around. He follows where this noise is coming from, because on this big gold mine site, noises echo. And the reason they echo is because it's almost like a dugout area. It's a huge cleared area in the forest. And what you've got is massive trees all around, where the sound it does kind of echo, and it bounces off the trees on the side. So if you hear a noise, sometimes it's hard to tell where it's coming from. And Danny was in a situation where he stood there walking in what he thinks to be the right direction, but for all he knows, it's behind him. He keeps walking, and there's another kind of booth coming up. It's like every kilometer or so there's a booth, and he keeps walking. There's always a couple of security in each one, and he comes up to this booth, and there's these mini windows on these booths. On these particular ones on this gold mine site, and you can just push them open.
Okay,
it
got
gets
a little
bit
laggy.
Stuffy in there and kind of breathless. And they had all of these mini windows,
Why are you lagging?
which wasn't uncommon, and there was nothing wrong with it.
I'm wondering
if
it's
there was
because
something they were doing, which was causing
I'm also
sounds from
recording this video.
Danny walks all the way up to their booth.
So maybe OBS gets overloaded.
Noises are, can you hear them?
When you stream
he knows
and
that they can definitely
record.
hear them. So when he goes up to this mini booth, he sees there are two guys inside. One guy is on his phone being extremely lazy, and the other guy is taking a look at some of the cameras around the area on the left side of the site. He interrupts them and he's like, can you guys hear the noises coming from in the forest? I think it's literally in line with your booth. And the guy's like, yeah, we've been hearing it for like the past 30 minutes or so, and it's been a bit of an issue. The second thing Danny noticed it was actually the first thing before he even asked the guys, did they notice the grumbling? But that wasn't his intention. He went in with the idea of just asking them, can you hear the noises? That's his job. He's a security, okay? Anything else in that room, he could have walked in and they could have been, I don't know, doing gymnastics. He wouldn't have laughed. He wouldn't have said anything. He would have just gone, can you hear those noises? What are they? We need to figure out what they are. Literally, that's what Danny said to me. He needed to get his job done. Then his brain goes straight
You got
to
one
that
job,
thing
Danny.
that he could tell was causing it, the smell. Because the second he stood up to that door, that booth, he could smell bacon. He could smell sausages. And what did these two guys have? Turns out they were relatively new on the job. And for some reason, the guy who employed them had not fully vetted them or trained them or checked their backgrounds at all. Both of them only had a history in actually doing door work at nightclubs and no actual specific security work. He looked down and there was a portable grill, an electric grill, and they were cooking sausages and bacon on it. In the open, with the windows all open. And this is not a good idea, because while grizzly bears obviously would have a hard time getting over the fences or through them, it is dangerous, and the guards have to go outside of the sites many times for multiple different reasons. These guys were attracting a grizzly bear.
Should I chop this tree down?
That's what was making this noise. But the bear was
Let
actually
me know in the
the
comments.
He knew that he couldn't get to the field.
Yeah, let me know in the
So he
comments
was
if this
moaning and
tree
groaning
should
'cause he
stay
was
or
annoyed.
go.
He was, he was annoyed that he could smell this, but he knew it was on the other side of a 15-foot tall massive metal fence. So he was grumbling. And this is when Danny immediately said to the guys, put that thing off now. You need to stop. And the guys look at him, they're like, they seem really intimidated. They're like worried, as if it only dawned on them when Danny said that. And they quickly switch it off. And after a while, they haven't finished cooking it. He tells them to put it away and that they should only bring food that is pre-prepared and that they should not bring lunch boxes. That the idea is if they're going to bring food, it stays in their car and they go to eat it in the car. And the no lunchbox rule, the way they get around that is on their shifts, their lunch breaks. Some of the teams will go to diners out in these remote areas. They'll go to cafes. They'll go to, restaurants, even coffee shops, where they will have a meal, a lunch, and then they'll come back. So they have no food in their vehicles, no food anywhere. Although some of them choose to bring it in their truck. They do not have lunch boxes on site. They cannot bring them on site. Most of them. I think that some of them do that, but the one that Danny worked at and the previous one that his colleague worked at had the no lunchbox rule. They don't want to attract the bears because once the bears end up smelling that there's food, they have it in its muscle memory. They associate the site with, they're cooking, sausages or they're cooking food. And even though the bears know they can't get in, they're clever. They'll wait by the gate when these security officers are leaving, when they clock off. And that's happened before as well. One of Danny's colleagues has seen that, is they wait by the gate because they know that in there is some amazing smelling food. And then they learn, where do these guys come out? It's them with the food. And then they wait.
They're smart.
And that is a sneaky thing that a lot of people don't actually think about. And these guys totally underestimated bears, not only how powerful they can be, even against a metal fence, but also how clever they can be. The third rule is called the buffer zone rule. Danny had a couple of guys he used to work security with, who he chatted with on this site, who used to be security for diamond mines in Mexico. And the raids that they used to do out there were obviously a lot more common in Mexico. However, in Canada, they still have a risk of this. The security is a lot higher, and the chances and risks of raids are way lower. But they're not zero. This rule is called the buffer zone rule. What the buffer zone rule means is it's a perimeter around the site which slows down people trying to raid. The first thing they do is they have cut out trenches. It's almost like a moat that the gold mine is within. Then they have the best, strongest security fences and gates you can possibly imagine and that money can buy.
I've never seen a gold mine before, so I don't really know.
They have sometimes even armed guards on site depending on the risk level of that particular gold mine. There was actually a story that one of his friends told him.
So there actually does need to be a road going through here too.
And he was working out in Mexico with a team of guys who he had just been introduced with. This was something that they were constantly stressed about,
doing that
and he
another
noticed
time.
Some of the guys were always looking out onto the road. This particular gold mine was in what he described to be looking like a desert area, and the particular area where they were was off a pretty quiet road, which made it even worse. A lot of the guys he was actually working with on this gold mine were locals. They knew the area, they spoke the language, and they grew up there, which kind of helped. Because if anyone was asking for directions, believe me, apparently some of these people would pull over and ask the gold mine security for directions. Tourists, people got lost, people traveling to cities to visit their son or daughter at a university. It was an absolute nightmare. There was a vehicle that turned up. And when it turned up, the security there instantly changed. They knew that this vehicle was a worry because the vehicle itself was an SUV. It was fairly expensive. It was big. It was one of those SUVs that are strong, that can do a lot of damage. And that was a concern to the security officers in the Mexico gold mine because they did not know what to expect. And a lot more of the officers out in Canada have weapons and are armed because of the such high levels of risks of the raids. And what happened is this particular vehicle starts driving towards the site, and They are looking at each other, trying to analyze when they can do anything, because obviously they can't just like, they can't destroy the vehicle. They can't take out the threat unless they know it's a threat. So they have to wait. They see what this person wants, and they see if they're going to ask for directions, turn around, because this particular route in, although it was off a quiet road, it was one way. Like, it was a narrow road to get to the gold mine gates. You could not.
Are we in New
just go
Mexico
down
now,
and
or
turn
still in
to a
Canada?
house there. It was pretty obvious that this place was
Wasn't
not
paying
a
attention.
neighborhood. This vehicle slowly starts to make its way all the way up to the gate, and the guards are really kind of hesitant. They're ready to just flinch. These guys are on edge. And the vehicle pulls up. Nobody opens a window. The windows are tinted out, which I didn't say. They're tinted out, which makes things even worse. And it goes up to the front gate, probably like 10 meters up to the front gate, and just stops. And everyone in that security team, they had guys with weapons, quite literally pointed
They probably
at
have
this
like
SUV,
high-powered weapons
and no
too.
one had a clue what to do, because they weren't going to ram the gate because they were so close to it. So they weren't doing that. So the guys expected, you know, people to get out and have weapons, and something really bad to go down. So some of the security, including the guy that went through this experience, were trying to find cover. They were trying to act confident while getting ready for nightmare that they thought was about to happen. This vehicle was stood there literally completely on the spot for around a minute to 2 minutes, and then eventually it starts to reverse, and it does a turn in the middle of this narrow road, driving off over the edge and then turning around and driving off. When this drove off, they got the tags, their cameras got a bunch of video and freeze frames and screenshots, and they, you know, made everyone aware who needed to be aware. So like, they contacted the people in charge of the gold mine site, the managers, you know, they made sure people knew what had happened, because now they knew and expected over the next week or two something really bad to happen, that some kind of gang or group had found the mine, or they were just kind of scouting it out for what they could do next. And that was a concern for these guys working in the Mexican gold mine, because it was so dangerous. So what really is this buffer zone rule that Danny and his guys in Canada actually had to you know, be around? This buffer zone rule doesn't necessarily apply to him directly. It's more the people who create and put up the security and infrastructure of a gold mine. So it will be built in a way that there will be trenches, there will be fences that are ram-proof, there will be so many things, drones, officers trained in many different ways for many different situations, and all of this creates a buffer. Another really important thing about the buffer zone rule is a lot of the gold mines are built in a way that there's also a major buffer between getting through the gate and breaching security and defenses and getting to the actual gold. Then you've got to get through a whole load of other stuff. Sometimes they place it like quite literally miles from the entrance or around the perimeter, depending on how big the site is. It can be miles and miles for, you know, for people to get in and then locate it, and by which time they've spent like 40 minutes, even if they were to drive top speed all the way to the gold mine once they breach security, it would be nearly impossible. And this buffer zone is a series of things that slow them down. The last buffer being the incredibly long journey to get to what they want once, or if they have managed to breach security, which is nearly impossible. A lot of the people that go through these types of things went through them in like before 1990 basically, when security wasn't all that great with these gold mines, and it was a lot easier for, you know, groups and gangs to try and get in and, you know, do raids on these sites. Next rule is called the 5-minute radio check rule, and this applies to the winters, usually
Yeah, this is something I never really thought about.
It's essential that the security officers do this while on foot patrol.
Like security,
Now,
like
of
people
course,
doing
people who would
gold
want to
mine
go into a gold
raids.
mine would see a blizzard or sub-zero
Never heard of that
conditions as
happening.
really ideal because it acts as a distraction. It makes things harder for the security guards not only to see, but to hold things, feel things, and even be able to hear things, depending on the wind and which direction things are going. But that's not actually what the 5-minute radio rule actually applies to. Something happened to Danny, and it was a close friend of his. He got hypothermia, and they had no idea he had it. When they went out, it was a random morning one time. It was extremely cold, and both of them had to do some checks. They have their set patrols, which they have to do every single day. Whether it's raining, whether it's shining, whether it's absolutely gale force winds, they have to do it. In this particular day, they'd been caught up in a pretty bad snow blizzard. It was bad, like a full-blown snowstorm. They kitted up and made sure they had enough layers on.
It's the
they had
best time to raid a gold mine.
Massive kind of
They
thermal
least expect
coats
it.
that you can buy. They're really expensive, and they look like puffer coats. They make you look like really, really strong, like you've got big muscles and big arms. And this coat acts as almost an insulator. They use some kind of, I don't know, some kind of material that keeps the heat in. It's not like your usual raincoat, which wouldn't do the job. They put both these big coats on, as every single booth had a room with a cupboard where they open the cupboard up and they take these huge coats out. Some of them fit them well, some of them don't fit them too well. You know, the guys who are a bit shorter struggle with these big coats. And then there are guys that are in security that are too big for the coats
think
and
we'll
they struggle to put
start
them on and get the zip to go
or
on.
continue, I should
Danny
say,
and a friend
on
of
a
his had to
building
do
that
this
I
patrol. It was their
was
kind of
briefly
time
working
to do it,
on.
and they would have to go for around about 15 minutes
Basically,
in
I've
one
just
direction
started to build a
15
staircase
minutes
to
back
it.
in the other. Now, of course, this was something they had to do, and when they
But I
went
needed to
on
fill
this
in
patrol, they
everything
each had
else.
their own radio. Danny decided to walk at a certain pace.
Sometimes
and
I
his friend
just
or
start
his
with a
colleague decided
staircase,
to walk the opposite direction
and
at a
then
similar pace to him.
and like
While
that
they were chatting on the
line of the
radios,
building.
talking about things, mostly about how they couldn't
Yeah,
feel
look at
their
that.
fingers,
That's
their nose, their lips,
quite
or
an
their
extensive
face.
road
It was
network.
probably his least favorite time
And
working
that's
on the
kind of what I've been
gold mine.
working
Was
on.
when it was
It's
extremely
all these
cold out,
roads
even without the snow. Just the sub-zero conditions
going
and
so
temperatures
far
makes it
south.
really unbearable when they are leaving their booth because it becomes so cold. He was walking and he remembers just feeling really, really shivery. It got to a point where his body was starting to shiver uncontrollably because of the cold temperatures. Now, this thermal coat was doing its job because if he didn't have it on, well, it would have gone real bad, let's just say. He was going further and further out, and eventually he sees his timer and it starts going off. 15 minutes is up. So he turns around and he starts making his way back.
It would
for
make
another
sense
15
to do a
minutes to
road
get back
all
to
the
the
way
booth.
here,
Now, obviously,
connect to
his friend
here.
doesn't walk at the exact same speed as
But
him.
that's kind of
and
what
the
this
chances are
road
one of them will
does.
probably turn up quicker than the other, and then they'll just have to wait for the other one.
I think for
All the while,
now,
he's
we'll
still
just leave
talking
this
to
as
his
it
friend on
is.
the radio until around
And
halfway back.
I think I'm gonna
They were
try
just
to
joking about how they couldn't feel
work on a building that's
their
right there.
nose or their eyebrows were freezing up and had ice on them. And it was really like typical jokes and small talk, talking about the football game because they both supported the
All right,
local
Danny.
team where they lived in Canada. And it was just to them a bit of fun while trying to get through that suffering. He only had around 5, maybe 6 minutes left to get back to the booth, and all of a sudden Danny realized that his friend stopped talking back on the radio.
Gotta leave my horse in here.
This was bad because it was breaking the 5-minute radio rule. There's a rule that most of the gold mine security workers have, and it's that if you don't talk on the radio every 5 minutes during sub-zero conditions, then someone has to be sent out to try and find you, because it probably means that you've got hypothermia, you passed out, or something really bad has happened. So, sure enough, Danny makes it back to the booth. There's 2 other guys in this booth, and he talks to them, and he's like, yeah, he hasn't come back. We need to go out and find him. Open up the cupboard, get your coats on, let's go. So the first thing they do is they get up and they start getting ready. They put their boots on, they put these special insulation trousers, the special coat on, they put like 3 hats on, gloves, and then eventually they make their way out and they all head in the direction that this guy went in. And the rate of snowfall was so high that even in a matter of 10 or 15 minutes, he could have been pretty half buried by this really strong snow blizzard. At least portions of his body could have been totally under snow at this point because they still had to get out to him. And Danny remembers roughly when
Yikes,
he
not
stopped
good.
responding on the radio, and it was when he was within 5 minutes of the booth, which means by this point he had been so-called, gone or unresponsive for at least 10 to 15 minutes. Now they had to get out to him and figure out where he actually was. It was most likely one of two things. The first one, which they hoped it was, his radio just ran out of battery, malfunctioned, something went wrong, signal was jamming, he just couldn't get the
Need
connection
some
right.
more food.
The second one, which they feared it would be, but they didn't want it to be, with every single, feeling in their body, they prayed it wasn't that he had lost consciousness and something had happened to him in the middle of the snow. If he had landed face down in the snow, it can be very dangerous, and they know that time was of the essence, so they absolutely had to get to him. Danny encourages these two guys to start jogging. They're very careful where they're running because there are places where the snow is uneven. It's very uncomfortable. They're running in these massive snow boots. Imagine wearing ski boots or something and trying to run in them in thick
Can you
snow
imagine?
where your feet just sink. It is an absolute nightmare. Yes, they have
Where
snow
is
plows
my
on
horse?
site. Yes, they have people who do that. But remember, this snow is falling so heavily because it was a snowstorm that it doesn't make a difference, because every hour or two there is fresh, thick snow being laid by this storm. They had been walking for probably around 5 minutes after jogging or trying to jog for the first 2. It got uncomfortable. One of the guys literally started to lose his boot. It was coming loose. The straps had come undone. Eventually, they come up to what they see to be an object laying on the floor, and Danny instantly feels really, really bad in the pit of his stomach.
Alright,
He gets that
first
feeling
we
like
need to
something
see
bad's happened,
what
he can't fix,
materials
and that he is going to have to break
this
the
building
news
will
to the
have.
family and to his boss. So they find a way to get to him. They finally realize that he has lost consciousness. His body temperature has dropped dangerously low. They all 3 of them pick him up and take him back to the booth. Now, carrying him back to the booth took over 50
Okay, they
minutes.
found
It only
Danny.
took them around 10 minutes, probably less, to get out
That's
to him,
good.
but it took them almost double the time to get back to the booth, even while carrying him and trying to jog a little bit. They couldn't afford to trip up and drop him. That would have been an absolute nightmare. So they kept themselves stable and they tried to keep things as safe as they possibly could. By the time they finally make it back to the booth, this guy is totally unresponsive, although they can find a pulse, which thank God was a good thing.
Alright.
But they still needed to figure out what was wrong with him. He had dangerously low blood pressure, he was extremely cold, very pale,
gotta
his
sell
heart rate was
touch
going
packs.
very, very fast, like dangerously
Get more
fast.
stone.
So they contact medics, they, use the emergency line, and they try their hardest to get some kind of response from him. They want to bring back color in his face, so they use different techniques and first aid that they have been trained to do. After a while, this starts to work, but it wasn't until the medics arrived and actually properly took over the situation that this guy actually regained full consciousness and was okay in the booth. So because of what happened, they would not let him stay on site. They had to take him in to run a bunch of tests and to make sure that he was okay. So eventually Danny hears from him.
Alright, I think we're
around 3
gonna go
days later.
into
He's fine. He got hypothermia,
this
he
tunnel.
became unresponsive.
See if we can't
even
find
though
some
Danny the
tough.
whole time was joking with him on the radio, this guy was just saying how he couldn't feel his lips, couldn't feel his nose, couldn't feel his fingers. The one sign that he ignored was actually the dizziness and the heart palpitation. The numbness of the fingers is standard, people can cope with that. Most people get it when it's the winter and they go outside to shovel snow or plow snow, and they're out there in the middle of nowhere. That's bearable. Some of the real warning signs, which they're trained and taught to look out for, he ignored. The 5-minute radio rule is very simple. It's as follows. Every 5 minutes during a sub-zero temperature, you must do radio check-ins with either the guys in your booth or the other guys doing foot patrols in the other direction. If you don't do this, then if something happens to you, they won't have a clue, because how would they know? The reason Danny knew was because the guy wasn't replying on the radio. He had to do a check every 5 minutes. They were talking with each other every 20 seconds, so the 5-minute rule didn't really apply to their situation until he went over 5 minutes without talking to him, and then it kicked in. Now this rule is really, really important, only usually during winter, although it can also apply during night shift replies, because this can be really, really dangerous. If something happens to someone in the night, then it's good to still know what happened, where they are, and basically they know that if someone hasn't replied to any kind of radio call or transmission in 5 minutes or more, that they must find that person and
Bad news bears.
it means that they're in danger. Now sometimes the guys have forgotten to do this. It's a difficult rule to remember because it's so simple and basic.
So this is good. We
struggle
got some
to keep kind of their memory on point,
cobble
so
deep
they
slate.
keep remembering to do it. And multiple times, Danny and even the other teams on the other side of this gold mine have ended up, declaring an emergency to try and find a guy who is simply just not clocked in every 5 minutes during a sub-zero temperature, and he feels guilty, he feels bad because things even start to go off like alarms and radio calls start going frantic. Guys hop in their vehicles and start driving around looking for where this person is, and eventually they'll just find a guy that's like, oh, I'm okay, I'm here, what's going on? And they'll have to remind him of the 5-minute radio rule. Otherwise, it will just keep happening over and over again. So that's another really important rule that Danny and his boys have to follow. The next rule that Danny told me about only applies to certain gold mines and diamond mines. Some of the mines are on sites and places which have been known for lots of spirits
Danny got lost
and apparition activity.
They dragged him out.
And Danny's particular site is one of those.
The gold mine?
A lot of people who work security do report seeing lots of creepy things, but it's mostly things in our world, the world that we can see with our eyes, visible light spectrum. But when there are certain sites all around the world, not just Canada, that have different spirits or things going on, that can make a security officer lose their mind. Because security guards are extremely ready. They're always ready to defend, figure out problems, and when they can't fix something, they lose their mind because they can't understand what's going on. This is the last rule we're going to be covering today, and it's called the hum, tap, and talk rule. It was actually a rule that Danny thinks he came up with. Initially, he realized that he was the only one who did this, but apparently after talking with guys online on different forums who also work at gold mines and diamond mines, it's a common thing that some of them actually do, and it seems to be only the ones that work on the haunted gold mines and diamond mines. These are the mines that have been around for hundreds of years, at least 50 plus, where they had workers going down into them, digging and working grueling hours. These guys apparently still haunt these mines, and they dwell and linger around the sites, sometimes scaring the security officers, mostly at night during their patrols.
The unions were established.
The hum, tap, and talk rule is very simple. Whenever anything like this happens to you, hum, tap, or talk. It takes your mind off it. It sometimes gets the spirit to leave.
Alright.
But a lot of the guys don't believe
This
it.
is exactly
so when it happens to them,
what we need.
It freaks them the hell out. And they don't really know what to do. When Danny first started working at this site in Canada, he didn't believe in any of the ghost stuff. He didn't believe in any of that stuff because he just thought that life is the way it is and everything he sees is the only thing that's real. But when he first had his initial encounter with something he couldn't see, he never forgot that. And after that, he started actually paying attention to the darkness. Apparently, they're in the darkness, not in the light.
Oh, yeah.
Look closely to the darkness, which Danny often did on his night patrols. He could see figures, shadows, even faces sometimes. And the longer he looked, the harder he concentrated on these darkness parts and shadows on the site, the closer he'd be to losing his mind. thinking that there's someone stood right in front of him in a different reality or realm or dimension. He started off really just not knowing about any of this, but the first thing that happened to him where he woke up to all of this was when he was patrolling on a night shift. It was like any other night, and he was night shifting with a guy called Anthony. Anthony was working with him alongside him for probably weeks up until this point. He had been posted in the same booth as him for that month. They were randomly walking around, having a chat, and they were doing their foot patrol. Sometimes security jobs can be very kind of laid back. As long as they're doing the right thing, it is okay to obviously have a chat with your colleague and who you're working with, as long as you're doing your job properly. But these guys, they were getting a bit carried away with their chat. He never said anything about what they were talking about, but he went on to say that something immediately stopped them both from talking. They were laughing, having a great vibe, and all of a sudden they both go completely silent and look all the way over to where the sound came from. As they look over, there's just a clearing. Next to that clearing is a mound that's been dug out, and further across are the buildings where they store a lot of the gold.
This is a really cool
These are where the
tunnel.
vaults are, the safes,
Another player built
processing
this.
areas, a lot of different
And
rooms within this building, which is all
they
completely secured with code.
they set up rooms like periodically throughout the tunnel
scans and stuff.
where they
And
have
this is the direction where
generously
this kind of
offloaded
visual
their
noise they describe
materials,
it
supplies.
broke their vibe
And
totally. It completely
they said that I could
silenced
have
their joking, their
some of it.
laughing, their banter, their small talk, and they looked
So
and both
we're gonna use that to build
screamed
this latest
into the
building.
They don't do anything. They don't say anything. They don't even say to each other, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?"
And
Because they know or think that if they say
this was
something,
just started
whatever was there
pretty recently.
is going to hear them.
April
And security officers
2026.
obviously aren't always
And
armed.
that tunnel
Depends
goes
on
on
the time of year,
quite a
the
ways.
risk level, the
And it's
country,
eventually going to go all the way back to the
on a
spawn.
site-to-site basis, depending on whether they're armed or not. There's usually always someone on the site that is, but not all of them necessarily.
Alright, I want to get through this story, but
Danny and his
I think it goes
colleague were
on
not
for
armed.
too
They were
long.
looking in the direction of where they thought
Too long for
someone was
one of my
walking, but
videos.
in their mind, they never thought someone's broken in.
Jeez.
No one ever broke in.
My
This
upstairs
was
neighbor is
nearly
being so
impossible
loud.
to get into these places, and yet what they were looking at was what they thought to be another officer.
I might
another
have to
security guard
text
patrolling
them
from a wing
and
over
ask
on
them to
the
keep it
south
down.
side, or a
Just
booth that was
so
over in
inconsiderate.
the other direction, and he had just walked across.
Really make me
So they
mad.
start looking. There's total silence between both of them for about 25 seconds.
I am
straight.
curious how much longer
Neither
is
of
in
them
this
say a
video.
word, and Danny could have sworn that he did not even take a breath for those 25 seconds, that he was trying to look around this kind of dark area where the security lights and the floodlights only light up the outside of the perimeter, so they
It's
can
like
see
so rude to
if
just
anyone's
be
coming
so
towards the fence.
oblivious.
On the inside, it's
to the
completely
neighbors
guarded
around
down
you.
because it's all just
So
like a lot of
annoying.
land. And until you get into the
And I'm like,
buildings where they
alright, I
process
kinda
it,
get it,
store it, or the
'cause
actual mine,
they're on the
there's no light
top
up.
floor.
So the booths have lighting.
So they
Everything in
probably
between, it's not like they light it up like a
don't
big,
know like how loud footsteps
24
can
hours a
be
day
for the
with
floor
massive
below
lights
them.
on. That's not quite how it
But
works.
even then,
So
it's
they
like
were looking into almost complete darkness.
super loud.
Although the lights on the other side of the fence were lighting a lot of where they were and where they
It's
set
like,
the
hey,
noise
you
up.
don't
It's
have
not
concrete
filtered.
floors, so
They're looking
people below you
25
can
minutes
hear
past, 25 seconds
whenever you're
past,
stomping around and like
and they
your
think to
dog's running
themselves,
around.
"Has someone
And
got in? Is there another security officer there?
But,
Who's going on?
you know, I'm
You know,
thankful
who's going on that kind of area?
that
There's no patrol.
the
It
neighbors
usually takes
on
place
either
there.
side of me, I
Some
never
of the
hear
guys
them.
drive their trucks by there, but
Like, I think the
that was
walls
not a truck,
on
there
the
was no
sides
sound
are
of tires
too
or anything.
thick for people to hear,
Up to
but
25 seconds is up.
like the
Danny
floor
turns to
above is
Anthony and
just
he just goes,
ridiculous.
"We're gonna head back to the booth." And Anthony
And I
looks
try
at
to
him.
be mindful of like my
Does what I just
footsteps,
did. Big kind of swallow.
so I don't bother the
Another
people
swallow.
below me.
And makes his way all the way back to the booth, with both of them constantly looking over their
I'm
shoulder.
distracted.
Not even, he told me, not even looking over
Alright.
his shoulder.
Yeah, this
fully
is a
turning
complicated
around to face
staircase.
where this noise came from. Now the noise was so clear and distinctive that it was pretty obvious that there was something or someone there. It freaked both of them out big time, and they tried everything. They tried shining their flashlights, they looked around the area, they even did a little bit of a call, which is rather unprofessional because you wouldn't call out for someone if you think someone has breached
Hey, is it a
the
gold
perimeter
thief over
of the
here?
mine. So they make their way back to the booth. They tell the guys. They also radio around earlier and say that they're hearing noises of what sounds like footsteps or somebody moving about the site. So this has put the rest of the security on high alert, and now it increases the foot patrols, people going out in vehicles, a couple of drones get put up into the air, and at this point,
Oh, it's that
Anthony
recent
and Danny are
drones.
kind of feeling bad because they think they've just given a false, kind of warning to everyone, and that it really was just the wind or something, or, they didn't know,
Classic.
but there was no one there because they searched the entire area of where he heard this sound, and there was
It's
no one.
always just the
Not only
wind.
that, not a single security guard had
It's
been
like in
a few
Splinter
weeks pass
Cell.
again.
Y'all ever played
This
those
time
games?
he has a similar encounter, but he actually sees something. You see, this time he doesn't hear a noise that catches his attention. This time he's doing a night foot patrol. He's without Anthony. He's on his own, and he just starts looking. Sometimes when security guards are very bored, they will just, cross their arms and look out into the, into the landscape. They'll look out into the field, the fences, the trees, the forest. They'll look at.
That's just what security guards do, man.
Because it gets pretty.
That's just what they
boring.
do.
It's kind of a bit numbing when you're constantly just walking up and down or sitting in this tiny booth with these white fluorescent lights, and obviously it's nighttime, you feel tired, even if you slept all day, you didn't sleep very well, and it's very difficult and it's stressful. So he's just really trying to focus on some things to get his brain kind of occupied and not so stressed out and lazy feeling. And as he's looking off into the distance, he can't really see much. It would be like putting your lights in your room to the lowest dim setting, like probably even lower than that.
See,
and then
he's
trying
a
to look around
very good
in areas of
storyteller.
the corner with the super
Sleslor.
dark. Like you can obviously still see, but you're doing a lot of guessing as to where the corners are, where your
It's just
wardrobes
kind of
are,
funny. Some of the
where
stuff
your
he says
shelf
is
is,
funny.
and it's kind of like hard. You can see rough outlines of things, but you can't fully make out where they actually stop and start. So that's the situation he was in terms of visibility. He is stood there.
Okay, good to know, buddy.
Looking out into this huge horizon. The site he works on, the gold mine in Canada, massive, absolutely massive, surrounded by a forest, and there's a lot of open kind of landscape. And he's looking out into this landscape, and he immediately sees movement, and it looks,
It's a ghost.
how. You know those what are those things people have when they celebrate, have celebrations, they have fireworks. You light those things on the end,
Yes.
and you do sparklers. That's it, sparklers. Yeah. If you have a
Sparklers.
sparkler and you move it around really quickly, it leaves like a line, a white kind of line, and it looks really weird to someone observing. It's almost like fluorescent. It kind of dissolves or disappears and leaves a really weird thing. It's super cool to watch. And I remember
Yep.
when I was younger being mesmerized by not just the way sparklers would sparkle, that's kind of the boring bit to me, but when people moved the
This
sparkler
guy's a
quickly,
character.
the way it would leave a line, almost like a ghost, passing through. You can see like a white shadow that kind of leaves the line and then it slowly dissipates. And he was looking off into the
Yes.
distance, and that's what he started to see. He started to see this white kind of movement of an outline of a figure of a human being, but it looked
Oh,
like
man.
a sparkler when you move it.
It's a
And
g- it must be a
this figure
ghost.
wasn't moving quickly. At first he thought it was, but he started to pay attention. Like I said earlier, you pay attention to the darkness, and the more he started to look and squint his eyes, he realized that there was some fully outlined kind of body stood probably 30 yards, 50 yards away from him in the darker part of this site. And he was looking at it, and he could not believe what he was seeing, because the harder he looked, the more of this spirit or entity he could see, and it was just floating around. It was walking from side to side. He could see a head, he could see the neck, then it came down to the shoulders, then the arms, and it was very vague. The same way when you quickly move the sparkler, it fades so quickly. The line disappears. It's instantaneous. You know, your eyes just quickly pick it up, and it fades. Well, this spirit that he was seeing was fading, and it was going into different kind of areas, and he could see when it moved, it was leaving behind a trail of the sparkler.
That's not
and it
good.
was extremely. It was not good for his mental kind of awareness.
Oh, that is not good for me.
He was thinking, what am I seeing here? So the first thing he does, he grabs out his radio and starts cracking jokes with his friends. And the hum, tap, talk method is a rule that Danny has implemented even to this day, and how important it is when he thinks something spiritual, as these sites obviously have some interesting history, some interesting spirit,
I need a water bucket.
and no one's ever really been allowed on them to do any kind of testing, or you know, no ghost kind of chasers and those kind of people who know a lot about it and have equipment to look at these things, because the people that run these gold mines aren't interested in that. You know, they probably know the history of the mine and that it isn't great, and that there's some really nasty things that maybe happen there and trapped souls, but they don't. You know, these security guards have seen things.
Let's see how much time is left in this video.
These gold mines. And
it
depends what site you work on.
4 minutes.
Some of them are totally normal.
Guess that's the end of the story.
And that's usually the ones that are fully lit
Danny
and
saw a ghost.
Ones that are only, you know, 40, 30, 20 years old, and definitely 10 years old, never have any of this activity. They never have any spirits, anything like that, because a lot of the brand new ones within the past decade or two have very powerful fluorescent lighting, and they've condensed the site to be a lot smaller, so it's easier to secure. They've got rid of the buffer zones, but it means it's more condensed and more secure.
The ghost can get in no matter
so while
what.
he was doing this patrol, he distracted himself from what he was seeing, because he was in denial of what he was seeing.
Yeah.
And if he had looked any longer, he was feeling terrified. He felt like he was going to start screaming. You know, he felt like he wanted to run. There was something there he could not understand. His brain could not comprehend it. In the same way that if you learn a language, you can't remember what people were saying if you listen to it when you didn't know the language. Okay? So if you're going to learn, say, Spanish, but you haven't learned it yet, and you go into a room where people are talking Spanish, you have no idea what they're saying. But when you learn Spanish, and once you've learnt it, you can't then think back to what they were saying and, you know, and remember every word and think of what they were saying, because back then your brain didn't know what the words meant. So it wouldn't have remembered the words. It wouldn't have known. And it's the same kind of system, is when him and the guards look into the darkness, when they know where to look and what to look for, he's seeing these kind of figures, these spirits, these apparitions.
I'm trying to remember
like the sparklers, like
kind of how I wanted to have this.
On boats, where they give off
Probably
like
glass.
Kind of, you know, bright.
Either that or just have it. Let's see, the door needs to be here.
Types of things that makes him and his fellow security guards feel like they're losing their minds. They cannot look at it for too long. They wouldn't dare talk to it. They have a rule also amongst themselves: do not talk or try and interact with any of the spirits.
To the spirits.
Hum, tap, talk. Hum, do not whistle. Do not whistle, because I made a video about that.
Talk.
Do not whistle in the forest, and a lot of different cultures believe.
Hopefully, I have a water bucket in here.
Ghosts and demons. And whether the ghosts and demons are bad, the spirits are bad or good, they just don't want to attract their attention, because they don't know what they can do. They don't know where they're coming from, what realm they're in. They let them be.
Water bucket
Wonder about
anywhere.
The gold mine. So thank you so much for Danny's really, really interesting 5 rules, which I covered here today, going into detail, explaining each one the best I could. He is not the greatest of speakers, so he would have struggled making this video. And he said to me that a lot of his job is really just being silent all day. It's only when he has a buddy on shift that he has all the radio kind of banter and small talk, and at night shift and in the winter. And obviously currently he is now in the summer, so he doesn't have the 5-minute radio check, apart from nighttime, which he doesn't work night shifts currently, although he
That's
has
good.
on the site that he's currently on. Thank you
I
so
wouldn't
much to
wanna
him.
want,
Everyone
work
here who is new,
night
please
shift.
click the subscribe button down below.
In a
Click
gold
the
mine.
grey notification bell down there. Leave a like on the videos, it really helps my channel. And I'd love to hear all your comments down below of any of the things you thought or would like.
All right. Well, that's that. That is Sleslor on YouTube. And yeah, we learned a lot about gold mines today. I mean, I can imagine the security is pretty tight on those. Kind of want to do a quick Google of what your typical gold mine looks like. I mean, I can imagine the security is top notch, and it's kind of funny, some of the stories. Because I think what was the first story? Just this guy got stranded in the cold, and they had to go rescue him. And then, of course, the ghost story. So yeah, all right. I think we'll call it for the video here. I'm gonna keep on the Twitch stream, so you guys most likely, if you see me on YouTube, I am streaming on Twitch most nights, so feel free to pop by here and enter the chat. Love to talk to you. All right. Thank you very much for watching.